It is roughly 1450 BCE, the middle of the night, and you are awake because your child is hot. Not just a mild flush, but the kind of sudden, radiating heat you feel through the back of your hand. Before your eyes have even adjusted to the dark, you are sitting on a woven reed mat inside a thick mud brick house on the west bank of the Nile. The room smells of stale dust, dried river silt, and burning sesame lamp oil. There is a wooden headrest shoved somewhere near your knee because you were sound asleep only 90 seconds ago. There is no thermometer in this room. There is no bottle of antibiotics, no packet of oral rehydration salts, no intravenous drip, no vaccine, and no doctor you can wake up. There is no clinic down by the riverbank, across the desert bluffs, or anywhere on the surface of the earth. What you have is a shallow clay oil lamp, a jar of river water you do not entirely trust, a small wooden carving of a lion-faced dwarf god sticking his tongue out at the doorway, and you. And the child was completely fine yesterday. That is the terrifying thing about early childhood. Children are always fine yesterday. So, what do you do? Because this is the fundamental problem ancient Egypt had to solve. Several million times over 3,000 years, getting a fragile human being from 0 to 5 years old, in a river valley saturated with parasites, with no germ theory, no clean water supply, and no idea what a bacterium is. Today, we examine the hidden reality of ancient Egyptian childhood, the milk contract that lasted 1,000 days, the curved knives carved from hippopotamus tusks, the spells shouted directly into the dark, the healing stones that worked for reasons nobody understood, and the single most dangerous day in an Egyptian child's life. Here is the picture most people carry around about the ancient world, because so many babies died. People must not have allowed themselves to get attached. The theory goes that parents had 8 children expecting to keep 4, refused to name them properly until they were past infancy, and rationed their grief, because constant heartbreak would be impossible to survive. In this telling, childhood is a modern invention, and ancient children were simply small adults with a high failure rate. That idea traces back to 20th century European historians, and when applied to ancient Egypt, it is completely, utterly wrong. The misunderstanding happened because of what survived, and where early archaeologists chose to dig. The grand Egyptian cemeteries that were excavated, photographed, and published across the 19th and 20th centuries were filled with adult tombs. Infant burials were startlingly rare, and for decades, that absence was read as emotional indifference. Except, that is not what was happening. In working-class settlements like Deir el-Medina, Lahoun, and Amarna, archaeologists discovered that ancient Egyptians frequently buried their smallest dead inside the home. Beneath the plaster of the living room floor, in the corners of bedrooms, wrapped carefully in clean white linen, and placed in small clay pots or wooden boxes, parents kept their lost infants as physically close as possible. The baby was not excluded from the burial ground. The baby was kept. Stack on the physics. Infant bone is paper-thin and porous, and does not survive the chemistry of the soil the way adult bone does. And stack on the excavators who were funded to find royal gold and colossal stone temples, digging straight through humble domestic floors without taking notes. The historical record did not find a civilization that shrugged at dead children. We found a civilization that loved them deeply, and we went looking for them with the wrong shovel. To understand how Egyptian children survived, you have to look at the unglamorous mechanics of the human body. An adult is a large, well-buffered water reservoir. You can be ill for 2 days, eat nothing, drink poorly, and stagger through it. A small child is not that. A toddler has a much larger surface area relative to their mass. A tiny fluid reserve, a rapid metabolism burning through moisture, and zero capacity to walk to a water jar and take a drink when they feel strange. Now, place that child next to the Nile. The Nile is the reason Egypt existed, and it was also an exceptionally efficient delivery system for everything that kills a toddler. Standing water in irrigation canals, snails carrying schistosoma flatworms, whipworm and roundworm eggs thriving in the unpaved streets, and swarms of flies moving between animal waste and food. And the thing all of that produced, over and over, was diarrheal illness. In an adult, it was 2 miserable days in bed. In a child under 3, it was an immediate countdown to fatal dehydration. Fluid left the small body faster than it could be replaced, and within 48 hours, the body simply stopped running. Ancient Egypt arrived at a singular, life-saving countermeasure, a 3-year breastfeeding contract. Egyptian children were breastfed for an extraordinarily long time. In the ancient wisdom text, known as the Instruction of Ani, a father reminds his grown son of his lifelong debt to his mother. She carried you, she nursed you for 3 years. Her breast was in your mouth for 3 full years. Now go and repay it. 3 years, roughly 1,000 days. This was not merely affection, it was the country's primary food safety system. Human breast milk was the only consistently sterile fluid in the entire Nile Valley. It was not drawn from a muddy canal, and it did not sit in an open clay jar collecting flies. It arrived at body temperature, carrying maternal antibodies directly into the infant's gut. For 1,000 days, prolonged lactation insulated the child from the water supply that was trying to kill them. When night fell, the Egyptian bedroom became a defended perimeter. You did not find state deities like Amun, Ra, or Osiris near the sleeping mat. Instead, the domestic sphere was guarded by Bes and Tahweret. Bes was an intentional contradiction to traditional Egyptian art. While temple gods were drawn in elegant profile, Bes was carved facing straight forward, staring directly out at the room. He was a lion-maned dwarf with bandy legs, a protruding tongue, and drawn bronze knives. He was made loud and grotesque on purpose, to confront whatever walked through the door in the dark. Beside him stood Tahweret, a standing, pregnant hippopotamus with lion limbs and the back of a crocodile. A female hippopotamus was the most aggressive animal in the Nile marshes, and the most ferocious protector of her young. During the Middle Kingdom, mothers carried curved wands cut from hippopotamus tusks, carved with protective creatures holding knives, inscribed with the words, "Protection by night, protection by day." When archaeologists examined surviving ivory wands in museums, they discovered that the pointed tips were heavily worn down. Mothers were physically dragging the ivory tusk across the dry earthen floor, scoring an unbroken circular boundary in the dust around the sleeping mat. 4,000 years before the baby monitor, parents executed the same instinct in Hippo ivory. You cannot watch the entire night, so you draw a circle, and you put something at the edge that is uglier than whatever is out there. And when physical barriers were set, parents spoke. In Papyrus Berlin 3027, the incantations do not read like polite prayers. They are furious challenges shouted into the dark. Have you come in the dark? Have you come to kiss this child? I will not let you kiss him. Have you come to take him away? I will not let you take him. Get out! It is the raw, unmistakable voice of a parent doing the only thing available at 3 in the morning, naming the enemy, placing their body between the threat and their child, and refusing to yield. Ancient Egyptian medicine and magic were not in competition. They ran side by side in the very same documents. In the Ebers Papyrus, dating to roughly 1550 BCE, we find pediatric treatments for coughs, bedwetting, and remedies to stop excessive infant crying using a substance called shepen, often read as the opium poppy. Alongside medical recipes sat ritual technology. When a child fell ill, the foundational myth invoked was that of the goddess Isis. Hiding her infant son Horus in the delta marshes, she returned to find him stung by a scorpion, rigid and dying. Her screams halted the sun in the sky until the gods restored the boy. Under magical logic, your sick child became Horus. You became Isis, and healing was framed as an established divine precedent. This concept was carved into stone tablets called Sippus Stelae, the most famous being the 4th century BCE Metternich stela. These stones depicted the child Horus standing triumphantly over scorpions and crocodiles, covered in hundreds of microscopic protective spells. To use the stela, clean water was poured over the top of the stone, allowed to cascade across the carved hieroglyphs and collected in a clean bowl below. The water was then given to the sick child to drink in small, measured sips. The carved words did not chemically dissolve into the water. But look at what the procedure actually achieved. It stopped a terrified, panicking family in their tracks and forced them to administer repeated small drinks of clean, poured water to a feverish, dehydrating child. It was, in practice, oral rehydration therapy, arrived at sideways through the mechanics of divine ritual. Looking at the wands and amulets, you might assume birth was the dangerous part. Everybody assumes birth is the danger. But the bones tell a much darker story. Bioarchaeological excavations at the royal city of Amarna, examining hundreds of child skeletons, revealed a population under severe biological stress. Stunted growth, porous eye socket lesions, known as cribra orbitalia, and linear enamel defects on teeth, the permanent scars of chronic malnutrition and infection. Isotope studies tracking nitrogen in juvenile bones show that Egyptian weaning concluded around age 3. And that is precisely where the mortality spike sits. The most dangerous day in an Egyptian child's life was not the day they were born. It was the day the milk stopped. At age 3, the toddler was taken off the only sterile fluid in the country and introduced to solid food, coarse barley porridge, water drawn from open canals, and dense bread ground on sandstone that filled every bite with grit. Deprived of maternal antibodies, the toddler's immune system collided with the full microbial reality of the Nile, and survival was divided by class. At Amarna's North Tombs Cemetery, excavators uncovered a mass burial ground of older children and adolescents, aged roughly 7 to 25, buried with almost no grave goods. Their skeletons showed compressed spinal vertebrae, healed fractures, and severe joint trauma from hauling stone blocks to build the royal capital. The same civilization that drew sacred circles around its infants also wore its older children down with relentless physical labor. Both realities are true. When you step back and connect the pieces, a remarkable pattern emerges. Ancient Egyptian magic was not irrational superstition. It was an intuitive risk management system, without demographic charts, microscopes, or germ theory. Ancient Egyptian families accurately mapped the threat matrix. They knew the vulnerable age window, 0 to 3. They knew the danger spiked after dark. They knew it caused rapid, catastrophic fluid loss. And they responded with the only practical interventions that could actually help: prolonged lactation, keeping an adult awake in the room, administering clean fluids, and guarding the threshold. They got the biological cause completely wrong. But they got the practical response astonishingly right. And keeping a child alive was an existential requirement. In ancient Egyptian religion, your personal immortality depended on having a living child who would speak your name. Bring offerings, and keep your soul alive in the afterlife. As recorded in ancient family wills from el-Medina, you saved your child because your eternal life depended on them. You saved them so they could save you. Today, we know the exact names of the pathogens in the water. Modern antibiotics and clean hydration have saved hundreds of millions of lives. Yet the human reality remains completely unchanged. Across 3,500 years, the room is the same room. The quiet vigil in the dark is the same vigil, and the hand placed gently against a child's warm forehead is the exact same hand. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the realities of the ancient world, please subscribe to the channel and leave a like. And tell us in the comments, which aspect of ancient Egyptian childcare surprised you most? Until next time.